The cartel came to Silver Creek expecting compliance. They always chose small, defenseless towns with weak security, places easy to dominate and transform into colonies for their sprawling criminal empire. But this time, they chose the wrong place. Samuel Torres, a former Marine who had seen the worst of war, wasn't about to let them take his town. Silver Creek, a small and sun-baked town in New Mexico, lay tucked just a few miles north of the Mexican border. On most days, it looked utterly unremarkable. A single main road, a scattering of shops, a modest police station, and a dusty gas station that provided one of the few fueling spots for miles. Yet beneath its quiet exterior, Silver Creek had long been an object of interest for a powerful cartel who saw in this town the perfect launching pad to push drugs deeper into the United States. That hot afternoon, 47-year-old Sam Torres stood outside his gas station, pumping fuel for a lone customer. His denim shirt was faded by the sun, sleeves rolled up to reveal a Marine Corps tattoo. There was a certain sharpness in his gaze, an edge that came from years of deployment in a war zone. He had only recently settled here, hoping to build a peaceful life. But peace was fragile, and Sam knew it well. When 3 black pickup trucks roared up and blocked the gas station's entrance, the atmosphere shifted, crackling with sudden menace. The startled customer hurriedly replaced the nozzle, paid with shaking hands, and drove off, leaving Sam alone to face the newcomers. The first man out of the lead pickup was Javier Cortez, 38 years old, lean but muscular, with a coiled tension in his movements, like a rattlesnake ready to strike. He wore a black shirt tucked into dark jeans, a belt adorned with a silver buckle, and boots made of snakeskin. His cold eyes scanned the area, and he gave a crooked grin that said he was no stranger to intimidation. Right behind him, 13 men jumped down from the trucks, each armed with AK-47s. They spread out, corralling the station as though they owned it. Javier approached Sam at a deliberate pace, measuring each step. Well, look who we have here," he said in Spanish-laced English. "Samuel Torres. Didn't we give you a chance to do business with us?" Sam, still gripping the gas pump, stared back without fear. "A chance," he repeated. "More like an ultimatum. Do you want me to hand over my station for peanuts so you can run your own operation? That's not a chance. That's theft." Javier scoffed and folded his arms. "Theft. Cooperation. Call it what you want. I told you before, sell this station to us. Do it the easy way. We even offered a decent price." His voice dripped with disdain, as though he found Sam's resistance more amusing than threatening. Sam exhaled, forcing himself to remain calm, though a swirl of anger brewed inside him. "I'm not selling," he said, finality lacing his tone. "I told you to get lost." The smirk fell from Javier's face. He took a slow breath, then turned to one of his armed men. "See that, boys?" he said, raising his voice. "A tough guy? But they all bend in the end." The henchmen laughed among themselves, half a dozen hands drifting suggestively toward their rifles. Javier nodded at a man who stepped forward, pulling back the bolt of his AK with a menacing click. The tension ratcheted higher, and a chill seemed to settle over the scorching desert air. "You know," Javier remarked softly, "I hate repeating myself. If you won't sell, maybe I'll just take this place over anyway. One little accident with the pump, maybe a stray bullet, and your precious station goes up in flames." He gestured to the lines of fuel hoses. "Now, that's not how you want to end your day, is it?" Yet Sam refused to look away. "You want to try?" he said, squaring his shoulders. "I survived worse than you in Iraq." Javier's lips twitched in annoyance. "We'll see about that," he said and motioned for his men to load up. The crack of metal against metal echoed as magazines slid into place. The scene teetered on the edge of violence. Then, an aging Ford Ranger pulled up behind the black pickups. The driver, an 89-year-old woman named Margaret Callahan, or Maggie to those who knew her well, leaned on the horn. Even from a distance, one could see her unimpressed stare behind the wheel. She wore her silver hair pulled back in a simple clip, and though the lines on her face spoke of age, her posture spoke of discipline, remnants of a life spent in uniform. "Move those trucks," Maggie barked through the open window, her voice carrying surprising authority. "You're blocking the entrance." Two of Javier's men, startled by the horn, stepped away from Sam and headed over to the Ford Ranger. One was a tall, lanky fellow with an AK slung across his shoulder. He tapped the butt of his rifle on the hood. "Hey, old lady, the station's closed. Take your rust bucket and leave." Maggie regarded him calmly. She didn't tremble, didn't cower. "Watch that rifle," she said, her voice quiet but pointed. "You might hurt someone." The tall man sneered. "That's the idea." Then he cocked the weapon. "We're done talking. You want trouble?" Maggie stared straight into his eyes. "You think guns make you powerful?" she asked, voice cold. "I've seen men use guns for good, and men use them for evil. But only a few truly understand what they cost." A laugh burst from the second henchman. "You talk big for someone who can barely walk on her own." Without missing a beat, Maggie opened the door and stepped out. Leaning on the side of the truck, she stood all of 5'2", but carried herself like she was 6 feet tall. "Let me give you some advice," she went on. "It's not me you need to worry about. It's where you'll end up after this." Then she turned her gaze toward the group with Javier and Sam. "And believe me, that place is a prison cell." Javier, having heard the commotion, marched over, sizing Maggie up. She looked frail compared to him, but there was a steeliness in her eyes that unsettled him more than he cared to admit. "A prison cell, huh?" He flashed a savage grin. "And who's going to put us there, Grandma?" Maggie returned the grin, though hers held no amusement. "The law," she said. "Or perhaps we'll do it ourselves if that's what it takes." A slow tension settled over the gas station as the cartel enforcers sized up Maggie. A few of them exchanged uneasy glances, uncertain about whether to laugh or take her seriously. Javier took a step closer, towering over the elderly woman. "You have a lot of nerve, old lady." Maggie didn't so much as flinch. "And you have a lot of bad decisions piling up. One more, and you won't walk away from this." A few of the cartel men shifted uncomfortably. They had heard rumors about Maggie Callahan, the ex-military widow who had outlived 2 wars and an entire generation of men tougher than them. Some said she had been CIA. Others swore she had killed men with her bare hands. Nobody knew the full truth, but they knew enough to be wary. Javier, however, wasn't the type to back down. He scoffed, gesturing to his men. "Get her out of here." Before they could move, Sam took a deliberate step forward, his hands at his sides but ready. "You put your hands on her, and you won't make it out of this town alive." Javier's smirk returned. "Oh, and who's going to stop us?" "You." Sam locked eyes with him. "No, all of us." Behind them, a truck engine rumbled to life, followed by the sound of several doors opening. Around the edges of the gas station, figures emerged, ranchers, shopkeepers, and locals, all armed. Some held rifles passed down for generations, and others carried shotguns meant for hunting. But every single one of them had the same hardened expression. They had had enough. Javier turned in a slow circle, his confidence wavering for the first time. "This is a mistake." Maggie tilted her head. "No, it's the end of your little game." Javier clenched his jaw, calculating his options. He was outnumbered, and while his men had more firepower, they were not prepared to fight an entire town willing to shoot back. He exhaled sharply. "Fine. We'll be back." Sam took a step forward. "No, you won't." Javier hesitated, then gave a curt nod to his men. Reluctantly, they climbed back into their trucks. Engines revved, and moments later, the convoy pulled away, disappearing in a cloud of dust. For the first time in months, the town stood in silence, free from the cartel's shadow. Maggie looked up at Sam and gave a small nod. "Told you we'd handle it." Sam chuckled. "That we did, Maggie." But deep down, he knew this wasn't over. This was just the beginning. The dust from the cartel's departure hadn't even settled before the townsfolk began murmuring among themselves. Relief mixed with tension, Silver Creek had won the first round, but the war was far from over. Sam turned to face the gathered locals. "We sent them a message, but that doesn't mean they're done with us. They'll be back, stronger, angrier, and looking for payback." A few heads nodded solemnly. Hank Williams, the gas station owner, crossed his arms. "Then we'd better be ready." Maggie smirked. "I always am." Jack Perez, a retired sheriff's deputy, stepped forward. "We need to get organized. If they come back, we can't just stand around and hope for the best." Sam agreed. "We form a town watch, rotating shifts to keep an eye on things. We reinforce the businesses they'll likely target first, and most importantly, we make sure everyone here knows how to defend themselves." Lisa Carter, who ran the diner, spoke up. What if some folks don't want to fight? Sam looked around. No one has to, but if we don't defend Silver Creek, there won't be a town left to save. The crowd exchanged glances before Jack clapped Sam on the back. Then we get to work. The next few days were a flurry of activity. Barricades went up at key intersections, sandbags were stacked in front of the town's most vulnerable businesses, and local ranchers turned their barns into makeshift armories. Sam and Jack ran firearm drills for the civilians willing to fight. Some had experience, others did not, but every single one of them carried determination in their eyes. Even Maggie took part, despite her age. When she picked up a rifle and hit a tin can from 50 yards away, more than a few people were impressed. Word of Silver Creek's defiance spread quickly. A few drifters who had no love for the cartel arrived, offering their skills in exchange for food and shelter. Among them was a man named Eli Vargas, a former cartel enforcer who had turned on his employers when they crossed a line even he couldn't stomach. Sam eyed Eli warily. Why should we trust you? Eli met his gaze without hesitation. Because I know how they think. I know how they'll come for you. Jack crossed his arms. And why would you help us? Eli sighed. Because I made a lot of mistakes in my life. I want to make one thing right. Maggie studied him before nodding. Then let's put that knowledge to use. A week passed in uneasy quiet. Then, late one evening, the lookout station near the highway ran into town, breathless. They're coming. Within minutes, the entire town was mobilized. Riflemen took positions on rooftops, barricades were reinforced, and every able-bodied person braced. Sam stood at the center of it all, his rifle slung over his shoulder. He exchanged a glance with Maggie, who gave him a small nod. Lights appeared on the horizon, dozens of headlights cutting through the darkness. The cartel wasn't sending a warning this time. They were coming to take Silver Creek by force. Sam took a deep breath. This is it. Engines roared as the convoy approached. The battle for Silver Creek was about to begin. The moment the cartel's convoy crossed into Silver Creek, the town erupted. The first explosion came from a hidden roadside charge, one of the many traps Eli Vargas had helped set. The lead truck's tires shredded, sending it veering into a ditch. Chaos followed. Sam fired the first rifle shot, striking the second truck's windshield. The driver swerved, trying to regain control, but Jack and his rooftop sharpshooters opened fire, forcing the cartel men to abandon their vehicles and take cover. From behind the barricades, the townspeople fought back with everything they had. The air filled with the thunderous roar of gunfire, echoing through the valley. For the first time, the cartel wasn't facing unarmed civilians. They were facing people willing to die for their homes. Javier, leading the charge for the cartel, cursed as he crouched behind an overturned truck. They were ready for us. A younger enforcer next to him, bleeding from a grazing shot to the arm, shouted, "What do we do?" Javier's jaw clenched. "We push forward. They can't hold forever." But Silver Creek had other plans. Maggie took her position on the second-floor balcony of the town's general store, a scoped rifle steadied in her hands. She wasn't as fast as she used to be, but she didn't need speed. She needed precision. She squeezed the trigger. One of Javier's men dropped instantly, a bullet lodged between his ribs. Another tried to crawl for cover, only for Jack's sharpshooters to pick him off. The cartel, used to being the hunters, found themselves the hunted. Sam led a group through the back alleyways, flanking their attackers. He raised his fist, a silent signal, before launching an assault from the side, cutting down more of the cartel's forces. Eli moved like a ghost, slipping between buildings, using his intimate knowledge of cartel tactics to predict their next move. He found Javier repositioning near the church and took aim. His bullet grazed the cartel leader's shoulder, forcing him to retreat. Javier swore under his breath. He never expected Silver Creek to fight this hard. "Fall back," he shouted, signaling to his men. As quickly as the attack had started, it began to unravel. The cartel fighters scrambled for their trucks, some wounded, others too scared to continue. The townspeople didn't let up. A few rounds pinged off metal as the last remaining cartel vehicles roared down the highway, disappearing into the night. Silver Creek had held. The battlefield was eerily silent as the dust settled. The wounded were tended to, and the fallen mourned. Sam looked around at the town, battered, bruised, but still standing. Maggie limped over, resting a hand on his shoulder. We did it. He exhaled. For now. Jack walked up, his rifle slung over his back. They won't forget this. Javier's pride is hurt. He'll come back. Eli, sitting on the church steps, nodded. And next time, he'll bring more. Maggie adjusted her hat, eyes sharp. Then we'll be ready. Sam surveyed the town, seeing resolve in every face. Silver Creek had drawn the line, and they wouldn't let the cartel cross it again. The war wasn't over. But Silver Creek wasn't afraid anymore. The town barely had time to breathe before the retaliation came. Early the next morning, a plume of smoke rose from the outskirts of Silver Creek. Sam, Maggie, and Jack arrived at the scene to find Hank Williams' gas station in flames. The heat warped the air, the smell of burning rubber and gasoline thick in their lungs. Eli, standing nearby with a clenched jaw, gestured toward a message scrawled on the remains of a wall, spray-painted in black. You think this is over? Sam exhaled sharply. They're trying to scare us. Maggie narrowed her eyes. They're going to have to try harder. Jack kicked at the scorched dirt. Hank's lucky he wasn't here when it happened. Eli crossed his arms. This is just the start. They want to make us desperate, make us regret fighting back. Sam straightened. Then we remind them who they're dealing with. That night, under the cover of darkness, a small group of Silver Creek's defenders gathered in the hills overlooking a cartel supply route. Eli pointed to a convoy of 3 vehicles parked at an isolated roadside stop. They used this route to smuggle weapons and drugs through the valley. We take this out, we hit them where it hurts. Sam nodded. Quick and clean. We make sure they know we won't just defend, we'll strike back. Maggie adjusted the strap of her rifle. Then let's get to work. Jack and his sharpshooters took the high ground while Sam, Eli, and a few others crept closer to the convoy. As planned, they set up an ambush, disabling the first vehicle's tires with silenced shots before launching an assault. Gunfire ripped through the night. The cartel men caught off guard, scrambled for cover, but they were outmatched. Within minutes, it was over. The convoy was destroyed, and Silver Creek had sent a message of its own. Sam wiped the sweat from his brow as he surveyed the wreckage. That'll slow them down. Eli nodded. But not for long. They all knew Javier wouldn't take this lightly. The next battle was coming, and it would be worse than anything they'd faced before. The next night, the cartel returned in force. A convoy of black SUVs and pickup trucks tore down the highway, headlights glowing like the eyes of predators. The town's lookouts spotted them first, sending the warning over the radio. Within minutes, Silver Creek was mobilized. Sam stood in the middle of Main Street, rifle in hand. Maggie took position on the second-floor balcony of the general store. Jack and his sharpshooters scattered across the rooftops, and Eli and a group of ranchers barricaded the entrance to town. This was it. Javier stepped out of the lead vehicle, his face dark with fury. I gave you a chance, he called out, his voice echoing in the quiet night. Now you all die. Sam didn't flinch. You should have walked away. Javier smirked. I never walk away. He raised his hand. Gunfire erupted. The first wave of cartel gunmen charged forward, rifles blazing. The townspeople held their ground, returning fire with calculated precision. The first SUV exploded as a well-placed Molotov cocktail from the rooftops turned it into a fireball. Sam moved through the chaos, picking off attackers with deadly accuracy. Jack and his team provided cover fire, forcing the cartel's advance to stall. Maggie, despite her age, took down 2 cartel enforcers with a sniper shot that sent a message: Silver Creek wouldn't fall easily. But Javier was relentless. His men regrouped, flanking through the alleys, pushing toward the center of town. A few townspeople were hit, forcing them to retreat toward the diner. Eli saw the shift in momentum. We need to cut off their reinforcements. Sam nodded. Then let's finish this. He grabbed a satchel of explosives and signaled to a small team. We take out their vehicles. We take away their power. Sam and Eli moved through the back streets, flanking the cartel's reinforcements. They planted explosives on the remaining SUVs, setting the charges with trembling hands. Before they could retreat, gunfire cracked through the night. Sam ducked behind cover, returning fire as cartel enforcers closed in. Eli was hit in the shoulder, but waved Sam off. Go. Blow it now. Sam hesitated for only a second before pressing the detonator. A massive explosion rocked Silver Creek, sending fire and debris into the air. The remaining cartel vehicles were destroyed, cutting off any chance of escape for Javier and his men. With their supply line obliterated and their forces crumbling, the cartel's remaining fighters panicked. Some tried to flee, others dropped their weapons and surrendered. Javier, bloodied but still standing, refused to give up. He turned towards Sam, pulling a pistol from his belt. "You think this is over?" he growled. Sam raised his rifle. "Yeah, I do." He pulled the trigger. Javier fell, his body hitting the dirt as silence settled over the battlefield. By dawn, the fires were dying, and the dead were being counted. The people of Silver Creek stood together, exhausted but victorious. Maggie sat on the diner steps, cleaning her rifle. Jack walked past, tipping his hat. Hell of a fight. Sam surveyed the town, now battered but still standing. "We did what we had to." Eli, bandaged but alive, grinned. "Javier's gone. The cartel won't be back." Maggie smirked. "And if they do, we'll remind them why that's a mistake." Silver Creek had won, and they would never be afraid again.